If I were to ask you what was the earliest memory you have about your life, in other words, what do you remember as far back as you go in your mind? What is the one thing you remember? Now, I think my mother was 21 when I was born, and my father is a little younger than she, so maybe he was maybe 19 or 20. I can't imagine that, but that's what it is. My father was younger than my mother. And I was just thinking about early memories I have when I was a little baby and on and on and on. The first memory I have, I was sitting in what I know now to be a high chair, one of the baby high chairs that has a little eating thing attached to it. And I think I was sucking my thumb. Can you believe that I remember that? I am a thumb sucker. I sucked a thumb I think I must have come from the hospital sucking my thumb. So my mother always said that I was a real good baby because all she had to do was stick my thumb in my mouth. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't fuss. I wouldn't do anything. I just sucked that thumb. Anyway, I remember being in a high chair, and it seemed like my mother and father were in the room. I don't know if it was like a dining room or a kitchen. It must have been a dining room or a kitchen. And I remember my mother giving me a bottle with milk in it. And it had one of those nipples. You're too young to remember this. You don't remember those nipples that came down on the sides of the bottle. Now we have those caps that you can screw on the baby's bottle. But in those days, we had rubber nipples that sort of clamps down on the outside of the bottle. Now, my mother tells me that a regular bottle was not good enough for me. She had to give me milk out of a Karo syrup bottle. Now, I don't know if that means anything to you, but that was a big bottle for a little baby to hold and drink milk. And I think I was a big baby. She said I did not walk until I was almost 2 years old. Well, she carried me everywhere. She probably didn't give me a chance to walk. Plus, I guess if she could just contain me by holding me, I guess she felt better. I don't know if it was that there weren't any strollers maybe back in those days. I do remember a baby carriage, sort of like a baby carriage, but I don't remember strollers. If you were around my age, were there strollers out when we were babies? I don't think there were any strollers. You know, so many things have come into place since we were babies. People around my age in the 70s and 80s, there were so many things our parents did not have that we had for our babies. My mother had diapers for me, and your mother probably did too. And they had to wash those diapers out and use them over and over. They had the cloth diapers. Well, people still use the cloth diapers, and they still wash them and use them over and over. But I think my mother had the big diapers, and they would fold them over and have the big pans. And oh my goodness, I'm glad those days are over for me. But I do remember that. And another thing I remember, when I was a little girl, I remember my brother Kent. See, I told you all that my mother and father had 5 children. I'm the oldest. Then my brother Kent was next to me. And I remember he and I were outside playing. We lived in Southeast on Savannah Place at that time. That's what my mother told us. That's where we lived. I remember my brother getting on a dog's back and riding the dog like it was a horse. And it was a big dog. Now, it may not have really been a huge dog, but when you're little, a dog seems large. Isn't this something how I remember that? Now, those are the two earliest memories I have. And of course, I'm sure there were many, many more, but those two stick out in my mind. Then I remember too, in elementary school, I went to John F. Cook Elementary School. I remember that. I remember being in the kindergarten in Mrs. Parker's class and playing in the house. She had a little house that you could actually go in. It had sides up it. It was sort of like a log cabin, but I think it was made out of blocks. And it was like a house. And I remember going in there, but I don't remember actually playing. But I know we must have played if we went in there. But I just don't have a memory of that. I do have a memory of being in the kindergarten or first grade when the speech teacher came. You know, it was nothing like those, the black schools. You know, we had black schools and white schools at that time. There was no integration at that time. And we had so many wonderful things going on in the black schools. We had a speech therapist that came and worked with all the children. And we had a mirror. And she taught us how to use our tongue when we talk. She showed us the roof of our mouth and how to make our tongue go up to the roof of our mouths. She taught us how to use our lips to form words. It was just amazing. We started off like that. So early on, we learned how to speak and to talk and to do recitations and all of that. And I remember programs. We used to be in programs and have programs and plays, and our parents used to come and see us. I remember May Day programs where we dressed in white and had programs out on the playground and all kinds of chairs, and the parents would come and we would, the older children would wrap the maypole. Isn't it amazing how you think about those things? Those were such good days. I remember my first fight. The sister next to me had short hair, and my mother used to braid her hair in little short braids, and she would do it all over her hair, all over her head, little short braids. And we didn't think anything of it. It was just what Mama did. But we were going to school one day, walking down North Capitol Street, and some girls were teasing her, making her cry about her hair, and sort of tried to bully us. I turned around, and that was the first and last time I was actually in a fight. Oh my goodness, I tore that girl up. I tore her up. I never met her. She was older than I was. And I guess she thought she could just bully us every day. But one thing I learned to do, I learned how to take my sister's hair loose and braid it and make the braids larger, not those little itty bitty polka dot bikini type of braids. In those days, little braids like that were not fashionable. Now, Little girls can go out of the house in any kind of braids. It's not a big deal. But in those days, the big girls, the bullies, laughed at my sister. And of course, I had to take care of my sister. And I did. And I took care of them on her behalf. Oh, we had good days. There's so many things I could tell you all. I bet you never knew I had been in a fight. Oh, yes. But we never cursed in fights the way they do now. But it's amazing. In those days, whenever there was a fight, other people started coming. Kids started coming from everywhere and cheering on, cheering on. There were people who were cheering for me. I didn't know that. I had no idea. Oh my goodness, I wish we could go back to those days. I remember those first memories I have of Mama and Daddy, and my first play experience on the outside of the house with my brother, and then going to school, taking my sisters to school. Now, I don't know, I guess my brothers must have gone in another direction, or they must have gone with some friends of theirs, because I only remember my sister. But I'm sure we walked together. Because I remember sometimes when we did not have the benefit of going to the shoe shop, my brother Richard's shoes would flip-flop, because the sole of his shoe was just doing like, have you ever heard that? Have you ever had anybody, did that ever happen to you? Flip-flop, flip-flop. And we had to have been walking to school together for me to realize that sound. Anyway, I'm just reminiscing here with you tonight. And I'm sure that you can talk about some of the things you remember. Why don't you put a couple of things down in the comment section that you remember when you were very, very young? Perhaps you were not even walking. Or perhaps you were 3 years old and your parents allowed you to stay outside and play. It's always fun. We'll talk again soon.